Welcome. Tim Dinas here with StatsJedi.com. This evening, we're going to take a look at something interesting. Um, if you saw the email, I mentioned the idea of Red Rover. And let me refresh those of you who might not have seen that. When you were a kid, did you play a game kind of like tag, only it was called Red Rover? We would divide it into two groups, and these two teams would try to be evenly matched, of course. We'd hold hands. We'd stand along a line with our hands linked, and we'd be opposing each other probably like about maybe, I don't know, 40 feet apart or so. And one team would call to the other team, Red Rover, let Joey come over. Okay. So Joey was a kid, for instance, we're calling. And so that team would let go of Joey, and Joey would run as fast as he could to try to bust through our line. And if he did, then he could take the people whose hands broke open back over to his side, to the other team. Then they would call one of us to come over and try to break their line. Now, what if Joey didn't break our line? If the line held, then Joey had to stay on our side. And so that's the analogy I drew. That when you're doing homework problems, you do the first problem, and when you can solve that problem, you've beaten it. It did not break through, and therefore it's on your side. The experience you gained from doing that exercise is on your side. So tonight we're going to look at another example of that, just this ordinary math situation you may have. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And I have learned to go ahead and use a Google Chrome document that will show up here now. So if you look, you see we have hypothetical situation, test one, test two, and test three. Somebody took test one and got a 77. They took test two and they got an 82. They took test three and got a 91. And so they're wondering what grade should they get on test four? What would happen? What do they need to make a certain overall average? So you see the question I wrote here to the side is, what do I need on test four to make a 90 average? Well, what I put next to this space, excuse me, is a formula. And here's what I did. I said to myself, if they want a 90 average, you'd have four 90s here, right? And the average is going to be the total divided by 4. So if you want a 90 average, multiply that 90 by 4, you get 360. So 360 would need to be the total of all four of these tests. So I took 360 minus these three scores to see what they would need, and you get 110. So unless there's a bonus of some kind, bonus credit on a test to make 110, that's what it would take to make a 90 average in that instance. So what about making an 80 average? Well, if you want an average of 80, that means the four tests have to add up to 4 times 80, which is 320. So take 320 minus each of these three test scores, that leaves you 70 left over. So they'd have to make a 70 on the fourth test, at least a 70, to make the average at least an 80. Now, I'm posing the question, what do I need on test 4 to make a 70 average? We can learn from what we just did. We don't have to just reinvent the wheel and do this from scratch like we did earlier. We can notice what's going on. So notice something with me. We see to make a 90 average, they need 110. To make an 80 average, they need a 70. So to let the average be 10 points lower, how much lower was their required test score? 40 points lower. And that's true. If this test were 40 points less, it'll make the average 10 points less because it's a fourth of the average. So if we do the same thing again and drop it by another 10-point average, wouldn't it make sense just to go down another 40? So I know this is going to be 70 minus 40 would be 30. Excuse me, let me rekey that properly. 30. So if they make a 30 on this test 4, they would have a 70 average. Now, worst case scenario, What if they don't take the test or get a 0 on it? You could take these three numbers, divide it by 4 for the 4 tests. You get 62.5 is the worst they could do if they had a 0 for test 4, which you'll notice is not too far below the 70, which makes sense because 0 is not horribly far below a 30. Best case scenario. Well, what if they made 100 here? You take these three numbers, add 100 to it, and divide it by 4. Um, Interesting. Let me fix this. I'll put 110 there. I want to put 100 in. So if they make 100 on this fourth test, their average would be 87.5. Now, suppose there was a bonus. If it's possible to make 110, then I can go in here and change my formula to say, suppose I have 110 that want to be averaging best case scenario minus the other three, divide by 4, and that gives me 90, the best they can hope for. So this little trick here was the idea of building formulas, which I'm not teaching you to build formulas per se, but the idea of the logic to go from one question to the next question and then the following question. I used the first and second questions to discover a pattern and employ that pattern for the next question. So that's the trick I'm talking about. That's using the strength of the problem you solved to your own advantage. I hope you enjoyed that. Um, if you have any questions, if you're in the chat, let me know. I want to briefly mention while you're here that I am offering online group tutoring. I'm also offering temporarily online individual tutoring, specifically with help with first-year statistics courses. However, if you have something more advanced for a limited time, I will be glad to help you with your algebra, trigonometry, whatever else you have of that sort. So every Tuesday night at 7:30, since the time changed, daylight saving, it'll be 7:30 p.m. every Tuesday. I will be on here, and I will be recording this for you to see later on in case you miss this. And we'll tackle something a little bit different every week. But I'm wanting you to be aware of my Facebook page, the page for the Tim Dinas Stats Jedi tutoring, as well as the Facebook group, which I'm having study skills for statistics students, which you need to answer questions to be able to go into the private group. Make sure you qualify to be in there. So thank you for being here. And since there are no questions at this point, I will go ahead and stop the share. And I will pause the recording here for a second. And I want to also mention to you, I have a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Tim Dinas Stats Jedi. So I will be posting things there quite a bit. I also have Instagram postings occasionally. So keep your eyes out for me. I'm hoping to increase my visibility. Hope you have a really great week. We'll see you next time.